military superiority was proven beyond a shadow of doubt with Operation Sindoor, where India selectively targeted and precisely struck terrorist infrastructure across Pakistan. Now, Air Marshal Narmdeshwar Tiwari has provided irrefutable proof of India's superiority over Pakistani military. Speaking at an aerospace seminar in New Delhi, Air Marshal Tiwari stated that India fired less than 50 missiles towards Pakistan during Operation Sindoor, which was more than enough to bring Pakistan on its knees and run back to the negotiating table. 50 missiles which disabled Pakistan's American and Chinese made fleet of warplanes by damaging the runways of their key air bases. 50 missiles which struck terror in the hearts of terrorists and destroyed key sections of their bases of operations across the country. Just 50 missiles that brought this so-called nuclear superpower to its knees. This is the strength of the Indian military. Let's open up this discussion. Major General G.G. Dwivedi, strong statement made by the Indian military officer, going about saying that it took India just days and less than 50 missiles to completely annihilate Pakistan, bring it to its knees and to the negotiating table to obtain a ceasefire. How do you have to react to this?
Well, first and foremost, I think the Air Marshal Tiwari's statement is very valid and it is very categorical. And there's no doubt about it that within a short time, I think as Air Marshal said, with about 50 weapons fired, the Pakistan did come on the negotiation table. Now we need to understand the larger picture. Today we are in the era of hybrid warfare, and hybrid warfare means both kinetic and non-kinetic. But no matter what type of warfare, air power is very critical, because until you have domination in the airspace, you cannot prosecute either the kinetic or non-kinetic warfare. Now in this case, the warfare was non-kinetic because there was no actual contact or there was no actual dogfight in the air, but both the air forces were on their respective side, and India did select very precise targets. Initially 9 terrorist camps which are hit and which are damaged, and thereon, as a retaliation to Pakistani airstrike, India took on 11 targets, and as Air Marshal said, we just used about 50 weapons. Why is it so? First and foremost, today air warfare is very precise. Means all the weapon systems have a very, very tight circular error of probability. That means that you can hit the target within about 10 meters. Secondly, you have the platform. Either you have the aircraft from where you can fire the weapons, so that is from the air to surface, or you can fire the weapon from surface to surface. So I'm sure this combination would have been used. Part of the air weapons delivered were from the air platforms, and part would have been delivered from the ground platform or surface platform. In this also, the weapon systems have to be a ideal mix, because it depends what weapon system is ideally used for what target. And in this case, as we can sort of make out from the media, that possibly BrahMos were used from the Su-30s, also from the surface to surface configuration, and the FALs had very potent weapon system package, that is the scalp, the hammer, very precise weapon systems. So therefore, I think what Air Marshal has tried to convey, that in today's era, your strength is in your air power. It is how precisely you can hit the target and how precisely you can, defeat the opponent's air defense system. So I think this is well taken, but I only like to add one point, that let's not be only Pakistan centric. We have to also take care of China, who is the actual nation behind Pakistan. And today China has huge, edge over us, especially in the form of, the stealth aircraft. They have about 200 of them, and we are still on the drawing board stage.
Okay, all right. I also have with me Air Vice Marshal O.P. Tiwari. Air Vice Marshal, very significant information that has been imparted by the IAF Vice Chief, when he says that less than 50 of these missiles were all that was needed for the Indian Air Force to completely destroy the bases, the aircraft bases in different parts of Pakistan. How do you assess this information? How do we understand this better? And how does this project India's dominance in its air capabilities against Pakistan?
Okay. What Vice Chief has said, he has fired less than 50 ammunitions. That clearly shows the efficiency or efficacy of our ammunitions. What has been fired, where it has been desired, it has hit the right place. Now with the Ukraine and this warfare, the concept of warfare has really actually changed. If the country doesn't have any aspiration to acquire somebody's territory, then the air warfare, the doctrine has to be changed. It is only the missiles, aircraft and other operation has to, UAV has to take place. Now I was listening to the Dwivedi sir that China is also an option. Now I like to say on this aspect, China के साथ 1962, if the Indian Air Force had been used, China would have lost the battle. Because just about 6 months before the 62 battle, Wing Commander Nath has taken a camera, taken all the photographs of entire Tibet Plateau and everything, whatever there, it has been produced on ground. Now I would like to add again further, like all our air bases are at about 200 to 300 feet AGL, and flying time from air bases to China border is hardly any time. Their airfields at about 10,000 feet, where the payload carrying capacity of Indian Air Force is nearly 100%, where the Chinese Air Force aircraft can get only with a 30% payload. So the only thing China is really scared of the Indian Air Force, because they cannot match, because of our geographical, not that you have got number of aircrafts or anything, because your geographical location, flying time, less flying time involved, and destroy them. And you would have proved the 62 war result would have been totally different. Now we have been all set and there is no problem at all. But now this thing, what Air Force has done in the Sindoor operation, Augustine will give you the correct picture, he will explain much better now. What has been done, what was desired has been hit precisely. No, not much of collateral damage, it precisely. That shows the efficiency of not the only equipments, but also the operators who has operated and will launch the missiles. And it has showed that. It has not only showed to us, Pakistan, it has showed to the whole world. So far we are producing missiles. People knew that Indian missiles manufactured are cheaper, but it has worked as a field trial. Now it has showed that they are not only cheap, but they are also very accurate and very efficient. And time will show, and India will start exporting. The demand of our missiles all over the world definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Group Captain MJ Augustine also on the telecast with me. He is a former MiG-21 fighter pilot. Sir, how difficult is it for the armed forces to first identify the target and be so precise that you are able to very clinically hit the very target without destroying the peripheries, without having impacted the population that is surrounding that particular target? And how was India able to successfully carry forward this program, this military operation? And I think this is once in a lifetime. This is never ever seen before, the way it was strategized, and these missiles were dropped so specifically. It was something that was so beautifully done. And if you could tell us what all does it take to act in such a high precision manner? I would like to unmute. I would like you to unmute yourself, sir. I am not able to hear you. Group Captain Vienja, would you like to take that question?
Megha, you have to repeat the question, please.
Yeah, the question about, how difficult, how challenging does it become to actually first identify these targets of the enemy country and being able to be so precise that you hit the target specifically and are also able to save the populated areas in the peripheries of their target? And how was India able to do this? Because this is something that has never been done before. So this is a new kind of stratagem that has been unveiled. India's capacity, Indian Air Force capacity in being able to identify these it would require high levels of intelligence for us to gather satellite images of extreme high precision, and again again, a coordinated effort that resulted in such success.
Yes, Megha. Look, today is the day when we are celebrating the Kargil Divas. So we must laud all effort of our armed forces, which was started on 7th of last month, and it was a red letter day in the entire operations that we can think of. Look, Operation Sindoor was absolutely flawless, and it can be termed as ideal as it can be. There is absolutely no doubt. However, subsequently, as you have also mentioned in your opening address, that it brought Pakistanis on the knee and made them to come to the negotiating table. What negotiating table? Has Pakistan come on to any negotiating table in the last 2 months that they had to negotiate something? No, they have not come. Instead, that mullah, the field marshal, he has been promoted. He has promoted himself, and Pakistan has projected itself with the help of Western powers as a winner, as a conqueror. No, I'm not going back to what narrative they are building. But look, if we have hit, say, 9 or 11 air bases, should we be happy that yes, we have hit 7 or 11 air bases of Pakistan? If we have neutralized their many of the radar station where they have become blind, what stopped us from destroying the air bases which is there? What stopped us? Look, the entire operations from 7th to the 10th, if we can look at it, India has only been trying to respond. I mark what word, measured response. Why should we give measured response? Why not give the punishing not to Pakistan, especially when we had the dominant hand, especially when we had the complete air dominance over the skies of Pakistan.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a question that can be argued, and it can be argued from both sides, keeping in mind that Pakistan reached out to India on that emergency call and pleaded for a ceasefire, a demand, a request that was made by Pakistan. And again, it's something on a strategic level, something on a diplomacy level that India take, and a military level and the government level that India took the decision that it decided to take. And like I said, it can be argued both ways, and there would be no end to it about why was such a decision taken, and how does this impact our association with Pakistan in the future? Does this act as a deterrence? Does it act as a lesson for Pakistan to finally learn and perhaps even scares Pakistan no end, that within 3 days, when all their air bases, radar systems, stations have been completely annihilated, what would have happened if there was just one more day that was extended for India's military operation to further hit deep into Pakistan? I'm going to bring back Group Captain Augustine and Captain Augustine again. I would like to understand from you, from the technical point, how were we able to perform such a clinical execution of the targets in such a precise, clean manner? It has got to take a teamwork. It needs a lot of information. It requires classified information, it requires satellite images, it requires intelligence to be able to know that where exactly is every single one of those air bases that we have to strike of enemy nation.
Great question, Megha. I would take it on in 2 steps. First and foremost is, I've been the boss of operational planning, for which I got presidential award. I was the first CATS of Eastern Air Command, and with that as the background, I am saying this. Whenever you carry out any operations, and this is for the consumption of Group Captain Chow, who has been my my senior and squadron doctor, the medical doctor when I was in Bidar, so for his consumption as well. So any operation starts with an operational aim through which operational objectivity or objectives flow. So if your aim, firstly, when the aim is spelt out, it is not spelt out to all and sundry. It is kept within the bounds of military planners and the polity. So based on the objectives that we achieved, we should be able to make out what was the aim, and the aim was A, destroy as many terror infrastructures as possible. B, give a loud and clear message, and it was not to go and hell for leather against Pakistan, like Russia and Ukraine. So in the era of precision, restraint, and deterrence, defined in the modern battlefield, especially the Indian battlefield, Operation Sindoor, I would say, has emerged a landmark demonstration of how a calibrated Indian military resolve was demonstrated. As Vice Chief, Marshal Narmdeshwar Tiwari, uh, he was instrumental in attacking that Tiger Hill during Kargil. He recently stated there is no greater example than Operation Sindoor, how a fewer than 50 precision-launched weapons employed with intelligence-led targeting that can decisively shape the strategic environment, please quote unquote, shape the strategic environment and compel an adversary to reconsider its course. These words are not just a reflection of military pride, but they are quite an assertion of doctrinal shift that how India wages war. It is not that we'll complete Nistan kar denge. No, that was not the thing. The operation was not a blind show of strength, but it was a message crafted with satellites, drone feeds, delivered through pinpoint strike on enemy infrastructure and leadership nodes, which he himself came and said, "Hamare, Noor Khan mein aake attack kar diya," across the entire hostile territory. It showed the world that India does not require massive troop movements or an extended combat to exact justice. It needs precision, intent, and integration. We showed all three. On top of IACCS, we put Akash Tir, and you know what Akash Tir did. Operation Sindoor proved that a joint force synergy, real-time intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, which in Air Force we call it the ISR, Indigenous Weapon System, BrahMos, when brought together with strategic clarity, can create disruptive effects for far and beyond the kinetic damage which General was mentioning too. It is a playbook not only as retaliation, but for a calibrated coercion, quote unquote, calibrated coercion. A doctrine that reflects that India's maturity as a regional power, willing to strike hard but smart. Remember, it is a pause button that is pressed. So in the wake of Pahalgam terror ambush, this operation served as a righteous and a proportional response. But more importantly, it set a new threshold for Indian retaliation.
Yeah.
Where intent is measured not only based on how many bombs we dropped, but how precisely and how effectively they were used.
Absolutely.
Very, very, very important. We call it in the military the buck splat. The buck splat is, when you drive a car, the buck comes and hits your windshield, isn't it? That splatter is called buck splat. Keeping the buck splat as low as you can so that there is least amount of collateral damage, but the effect is precise, and which is why you rightly brought out. They came on their knees and said, "Hame bacha lo and fatafat table pe aa jao." We said we are ever ready as long as you don't do a Pahalgam once more. Over to you, Megha.
Absolutely. Well explained, sir. General G. Dwivedi, again a situation where India found itself in. It is unfortunate, but action had to be taken, a lesson had to be taught to Pakistan, and a message had to be given to the world. After the Pahalgam attacks, we struck the terrorist bases. It was Pakistan which retaliated, and therefore we had to give a befitting response, and therefore the military installations had to be struck, and a job that was done superbly, successfully. It is also keeping in mind the preparations that went behind this entire 4-day operation. Our intent was to strike the terrorists and be done with it and withdraw. But because of Pakistan's aggression that was seen, we had to take retaliatory steps. This is something that India and the armed forces and the defense ministry would have, it was well thought out for any sort of exigencies. This Operation Plan B would have been executed, and that's exactly what happened. What goes on in the preparations? I mean, the Pahalgam attack happened in April 22nd. The strikes happened on May 7th. The Operation Sindoor initiated on May 7th. That left us about less than 20 days to prepare and to bring about our Air Force and the armed forces, the Air Force and Army together. How much time, in fact, how little time did the Indian Armed Forces have to prepare themselves in a way that the defeat of the enemy was something that was definite?
Well, Megha, I think you have flagged two very important issues. One is the intent, and second is the time of preparation. Well, having headed the Doctrine and Strategic branch in May during my service career, first and foremost is the political government, which gives you the political aim, and thereafter it's the armed forces who decide how to execute the political aim. In this case, the political aim was to give a very clear message to Pakistan that in case they resort to such type of activity, there will be punitive action and there will be retribution. That was the political aim. Now, how the aim was to be executed was by the armed forces. They picked up first the 9 targets to hit the bases of the terrorists, and then in retaliation they picked up the 11 air bases. Now, execution is with the armed forces. Political intent is conveyed by the government of the day. Secondly, preparation time. Please remember, armed forces only do 2 things. Either they are preparing or they are fighting. So during our peace time, when we are preparing, we already have the list of targets. We have the contingency plans. Only thing, when the green on is given, then we pick up the final targets and we go ahead with it. So therefore, armed forces are capable of executing the mission at a very, very short notice, because we always have contingencies in place. The third point, very important, is integration, because today you cannot fight a war in silos. You have to be totally integrated within the service and also in the inter-service. So that integration was well brought out, and I think that well demonstrated. And my fourth point is, we are still in the era of China, Tibet, high altitude. Please remember, today there is only one front, that is the China-Pakistan front. China will not hesitate to use the Pakistani bases in the plains and strike, because they already have demonstrated that in case of any contingency, they will be with Pakistan, and mind you, very shortly they will be having their naval assets at Gwadar. To protect them, they will be having air assets in Pakistan. So let's not be fooled that they are only going to fly from Tibet. They will be flying from anywhere, from Punjab plains, whatever possible. Yes, in 62, had we used the air, then the result would have been different.
Okay.
And my last point, that Sindoor gives us a very, very important lessons. We have done a great job, and now from here we got to take it forward and look at the joint threat for Pakistan and China as one, not see in isolation.
Okay. Air Vice Marshal Tiwari, there also has been an important message announcement that has been made on Kargil Vijay Divas by the Chief of Army Staff, where there have been a number of programs that have been launched, a number of missiles that have been inducted or are going to be inducted in the coming weeks, just to further fortify the strength of the Indian Armed Forces, the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy. How important and integral is it to ensure that the Indian Armed Forces have the top of the line weapons, ammunition to fight the enemy?
Yes, Indian Air Force has become, Indian Air Force or Indian Defense Forces has become, now we've got to taken a major step towards a self-sufficiency, like we can manufacture our own. Last testing what the DRDO has just done, that UAV launched deep penetration missiles V3, which have got a range of 4 kilometers and 2.5 kilometers by night. It's a very good step and very good for army as such. See, because what happens, these missiles can be fired in the night and the day and the range, and plus it can be guided very successfully. Payload can be varied. So that was a very nice step. Plus, what is the major issue? Like, suppose you buy an aircraft from any other country and you've got your own missiles and rockets which cannot be integrated. Then the purpose is defeated. So, most important is to have that all the launch vehicles should be with us, manufactured by India, so that you can integrate any of the weapons, depends what you require. So, we have a more flexibility. Now, India is progressing correctly on the mark of self-realization, self-sufficiency, and it will do well. And now I can tell you with the full confidence, like even because full confidence that Indian Air Force is capable of taking both the fronts. Though you can compare number of aircraft, China has got so many aircraft, Indian Air Force has got so many aircraft. You cannot compare the number of aircraft because China has got other borders also. From there also deploy.
Right.
So Dwivedi Singh was saying that you're absolutely right. It is not, though China has been voting, but we don't, I just can assure the public you don't have to be scared or don't have to be fearful about the China, because Indian Air Force is quite capable of reacting within a very short span of time that you have already seen it. You can react if anything happens. Air Force can react with a very short span of time. That too with the precision and the correct measures. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, on that note, I am completely out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views. And thanks for watching Newsx.